Okay, so welcome everyone. This is the Investigating LA panel. This is a part of the Undergraduate Research Week, which is starting today and ending Friday. So I'm really excited to have this panel conversation, which is really gathering these students who are focused on research related to Los Angeles in some way, and we have a very broad variety of research stemming from public health and education. We have urban planning. We've got someone from the Center for Community Engagement, psychology, and also international development studies. So it's a really wide variety of students, primarily in the social sciences, working on a topic related to Los Angeles. And I'm really excited to help moderate this panel and field questions thereafter. So feel free as you're watching our panelists, if there are questions that come up for you, we will definitely have time to have that conversation. Without further ado, I want to go ahead and have our first presenter, Alaiza Guerrero, get us started. So Alaiza, why don't you go ahead and feel free to share your screen and introduce yourself.
Alrighty, hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Once again, my name is Alaiza Guerrero. My pronouns are she, her, ella. I am a second year transfer student majoring in biology, so I will be graduating next month. And I conducted this research project under the Black Latinx AIDS Project at UCLA, where I currently serve as the Risk and Research Director. And I decided to do my research project on assessing the effectiveness of safe-sex education in Los Angeles, with a particular focus on Black and Latinx adolescents. So the methods of my research project can be divided into three sections: the pre-survey, the Blade Safe Sex presentation, and then the post-survey. So to begin, prior to even doing the presentation, students were asked to complete an anonymous pre-survey Google form where they were asked demographics and questions related to their sexual knowledge. Next, students were asked to listen to our 40-minute Blade Safe Sex presentation via Zoom. And then lastly, following completion of the Blade Safe Sex presentation, students were asked to complete an additional anonymous Google form where they were asked the same questions as the first Google form, but now with hopefully a little bit more knowledge. But who exactly did we survey? The survey data drew from 147 high school students at Lakewood High School, which is a high school in Los Angeles, which included Latinx, Black, Asian, and Caucasian students. And of the 147 students, 79 were Latinx and 27 were Black, which is about 70% of the total sample size. So the diversity that I've seen here really re-emphasized the importance of tailoring sexual education programs to meet the needs of the diverse student body. Not every culture will learn things the same way, and it's really important to keep that in mind when implementing educational programs. And I was really surprised, but really happy to see such diversity within Los Angeles amongst its student population. In the Bay Area, one of the standouts of my experience was the lack of representation. I had a group of friends, we were like a handful of Latinx students. So it was really powerful to see that there's that Latinx and Black students are the majority here. And pre-survey data showed that 96% of Black and Latinx students surveyed in Los Angeles have received safe sex education. So this was expected per the California Healthy Youth Act, which states that students in grades 7 through 12 must receive sexual education and HIV and AIDS prevention education at least once in middle school and once in high school. But I was still surprised by the level of compliance with sexual education mandates in Los Angeles compared to, once again, my own experience in the Bay Area, where as a student, I never received any form of safe sex education. So I really loved to see that there are a lot of empowered students in Los Angeles. Yet, even with such high compliance, there appears to be a significant knowledge gap for students. So based on the pre-survey data, Hispanic and Latinx adolescents only knew 1 out of 10 of the most common STDs, 1 out of 20 forms of contraception, and only about 23% knew what HIV is and who is most impacted by HIV. Similar patterns were seen in Black adolescents in Los Angeles. They only knew 2 out of 10 of the most common STDs, 1 out of 20 forms of contraception, and about a third of them knew what HIV was and who is most impacted. But following the Blade Safe Sex presentation, I saw a significant increase in STD and contraception retention. So Hispanic and Latinx adolescents in Los Angeles were now able to name 7 out of 10 of the most common STDs, which is a 60% increase, and were able to now name 13 out of 20 forms of contraception. Similarly, Black adolescents in Los Angeles were now able to also name 7 out of 10 of the most common STDs, which is another 60% increase, and 16 out of 20 forms of contraception. Based on my findings, I was able to conclude that the Blade Safe Sex presentation was effective for students in Los Angeles. The results underscore the necessity for comprehensive sex education, perhaps through more personable instructors, such as college students, as it evidently aids students in retaining this crucial information related to sexual health and pregnancy prevention strategies. In the long run, I hope that Los Angeles will consider adopting some of these strategies that involve more relatable presenters, such as college students. I remember in high school, like listening to an adult was a lot different than listening to somebody who was just a few years older than me. So I feel like they really felt that connection, and we were able to facilitate a much more open and comfortable discussion about sex among students. As for myself, I am taking the next steps in my educational journey and will be obtaining an MPH with the concentration in community health education at San Jose State University, where I hope to continue this similar research. And thank you so much for listening. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me or ask them here today.
Okay, great. Thank you. So what we'll do is we'll have all the presenters present, and then after that, we'll do the Q&A section. So yes, thanks so much for keeping on time there. So next, we've got Jade Liang. Yeah, feel free to go ahead and share your screen.
Sure. All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Jade. I'm a second-year MIMG major, microbiology, immunology, and molecular genetics major under the life science department. And right now I'm going to present on my research in urban planning and sustainability as a part of the URSP program. And I'm going to zoom in first. So my research is on supercommuting and how it changes across the COVID-19 pandemic. So what is supercommuting? It is defined as one-way commute to work over 90 minutes. So it is a really long commute duration. And according to this graph from Census Bureau, we can see there's an increasing trend of commute duration in the past 10 years. And although it dropped a little bit in the beginning of COVID-19, there is a predicted trend of increasing again in the future. So that's why I'm interested in long commute duration and long commute distance, which is bad for the environment and bad for workers' personal well-being and their equity in accessing public resources, like accessing public transit service, and lower quality of life and satisfaction of their work. So my research questions and method can be divided into 2 parts. So first, I want to know about this group, who are supercommuters and how they are different from regular commuters. Do they differ by these characteristics in demographic, household, and their commute trips? And secondly, I want to look at how it changes across the COVID-19 pandemic, and I choose the time point of 2019 and 2021, because 2021 is the first year after the shock of COVID-19, and 2020 doesn't have a really comprehensive data sets of data from the American Community Survey. So that's how I chose those 2 time points. And I'll use the data from ACS survey from the Census Bureau. And I will look at my findings on 3 essential parts. So the first one is about the commuter type. How do supercommuters use different commuters compared to regular commuters? And you guys can both see that the blue peak is for driving, like driving either solo driving or carpooling with others is a top choice for everyone. And this can lead to really bad environmental pollutions like air quality drops and congestions. And also supercommuters are more likely than regular commuters to use public transit as shown in this right side graph. And you can see more people use the commuter rail, which covers a larger range. So it's like people can come from one city of the same state to another city that doesn't need like driving, the driving will need for a longer time than commuter rail. And public transit also is examined to be taken twice as long as driving. So it can be like an equity issue because some people may not afford cars, so they can only take public transit, which takes longer and makes them supercommuters. And for workers themselves, it is found that higher income households are more likely to supercommute. And that's more related to the flexibility and the prestige of their occupations. So it's like people in technology or people in management, business, they don't need to be in the office in a really strict time, or they can be like for a later time of the day to go to the work. So they don't need to like have a long shift as those who are in service industry, and they need to be like, they don't have the choice to supercommute for such a long time to go to work because their shift hours are longer. And that's like related to an equity issue in occupations. And for the race and ethnicity point, we also find that according to this graph, you can see that the majority of supercommuters is white, and although there are fewer of them being supercommuters than regular commuters. And because we also look at the change of supercommuting across the COVID-19 pandemic, I show here how the number and the proportion of supercommuters both declined over the 2 years. So I show here the most drastic decrease category for both the number and the proportion of supercommuters. And it is quite interesting that almost the same categories experience the same, like similar degree of decrease. And that's also like a question that we need to consider, like why are a certain group of people are more likely to experience this decrease and experience this shock of commute duration. And for the final part of my research, I look at policy practices.
Jade,
So I
you're running out of time, just letting you know.
Oh yeah, sure. Then I'll just like present this graph for you guys to look at the 4 categories of policies. Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay, sorry to cut you off, but we'll have some time to talk afterwards. So great, thank you, Jade. So next we have Zephania Hartojo. Go ahead, Zephania, and share your screen.
Hi everyone, my name is Zephania and I'm a 4th-year public affairs major with a minor in community engagement and social change. As part of my minor's capstone, I had the opportunity to work with the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services as a community partner, and this project is a result of that partnership. It explores the structural barriers and promising practices surrounding the implementation of pre-release housing interventions. Particularly, I'm looking at what strategies may lower the structural barriers faced by local organizations providing pre-release housing services to returning community members. And a quick definition, the term returning community members is used to refer to individuals re-entering society after incarceration. In the context of Los Angeles specifically, housing and incarceration are deeply intertwined in what the Prison Policy Initiative calls the revolving door of homelessness. Simply put, being homeless increases a person's chances of interacting with the criminal justice system because of increased policing of petty crimes. And once you are incarcerated, securing housing becomes exponentially harder due to a host of collateral consequences. This has all resulted in Los Angeles having the 2nd highest rate of homelessness in the country and the greatest number of incarcerated individuals in the state. Traditionally, LA has approached these issues through reactionary measures, but more research is being done on the preventative side. And that kind of leads us back to my research question. To explore the landscape of preventative work among local reentry organizations in LA, I conducted a series of 45-minute long virtual interviews. In total, I interviewed 4 organizations, 2 representing LA County organizations with dedicated in-reach housing supportive programming, to kind of have that perspective of organizations working directly with the focus population. Additionally, 2 organizations from the federal level were also interviewed to gain insight from a wider perspective, allowing structural barriers and supports to be understood from all steps in that process. Data analysis was through Liger, a qualitative data analysis program. Part of the codification tree that I used to analyze the data is included on this slide here. And the coding of the interviews was done according to the areas of interest built into the codification tree and the interview protocol. And one thing to note with this software is that data points were unable to be coded into 2 different categories. All right, so findings. My research kind of found some interesting insights into the structural barriers present among local and federal organizations. Looking first at structural barriers, I classified them into 6 categories: jurisdiction, who has power where, a lack of funding, silos, which includes a lack of communication and collaboration, a lack of resources, mainly around a lack of beds, so housing, collateral consequences, and other ones that came up. The y-axis represents the number of instances that barrier was coded in the interviews. Before the project, my community partner and I kind of hypothesized that funding would be the major barrier that showed up. And while it's definitely still up there for federal organizations at 7 instances coded, it only was mentioned once for local organizations. For both sides, many funding concerns were actually wrapped into concerns of jurisdictions or silos, such as lack of coordination among county and federal funding streams. The resources and collateral consequences sections were also kind of telling, as these are the only 2 categories that local organizations spoke on more than the federal. These also happen to be categories that relate more to the day-to-day operations rather than broad-reaching barriers. Generally, in fact, I found that local organizations spoke about structural barriers less than federal organizations, even when prompted about them. This can be seen in the stark difference between total coded instances of structural barriers, 31 for federal and only 13 for local. Best practices that emerged kind of aligned with this distinction between local and federal organizations as well. Best practices are categorized into collaboration, coordination among jurisdictions, funding, and other. Off the bat, funding again was pretty surprising and indicative. It was barely mentioned as a best practice or strategy. And funding was mostly mentioned in the sense of coordinating grants or lowering costs. But pure monetary support was really only asked for once. This is important because money is often used as a reason why more programming cannot be implemented. But if funding is not a major barrier, then it's much easier to convince governmental entities to support preventative housing measures. Another surprise was the frequency at which coordination was mentioned by federal organizations. 23 times it was recorded, so it's showing that vertical coordination is widely seen as a necessity to lowering barriers. But for local organizations, they were more focused on the collaboration side or horizontal collaboration with other entities, more like the county jails and other nonprofits.
You're out of time, so wrap up, please.
All right, no worries. I'm very happy to take more questions at the end, but here are just some implications of the data. And thank you all for your time.
Okay, great. Thank you, Zephania. Okay, we'll chat more during the conversation. Okay, so next in line we have Namrata Poola. So Namrata, go ahead and share your screen.
Wonderful. Okay, can you guys see my screen? Okay, awesome. Hello, everyone. My name is Namrata Poola, pronounced she, her, and my project is about therapist adherence to trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy, which I know is a mouthful, so I'll be referring to it as TFCBT throughout my presentation. And our assessment is specifically for the implementation in Los Angeles community mental health settings. And I did this project with a wonderful team of co-research assistants in the Culture and Race/Ethnicity in Youth Mental Health Lab here at UCLA, under Dr. Anna Lau. Okay, just to get into it, as a preface for our research question and the reason why we were inspired to assess adherence, there is a context that about 64% of adults in LA County report at least one adverse childhood experience, and approximately a third of children residing in Los Angeles have reported experiencing 2 or more adverse childhood experiences, according to the Department of Public Health. So evidently, childhood trauma is a pertinent issue to our community, and that really gave us the context for assessing TFCBT because it is known as the leading form of youth therapy for those who experience trauma at a young age. However, we wanted to assess the efficacy of delivery in specific community health settings, given the understanding that these settings were not these circumstances in which they were originally developed for, and they may have unique challenges with the type of resources that they have access to, as well as the clinician training. So just to get into our research, this is a little bit of information about our data collection. And this is all from the study on the knowledge exchange on evidence-based practice sustainments for KEEP study, which is also under Dr. Anna Lau. And this is done through the LA County Department of Public Health, actually. So all of our data came from them. And we had about 46 therapists and 82 clients who were children about 4 to 17 years old. And we essentially coded about 190 sessions of therapy provided according to this program of TFCBT. And this is a little bit of a breakdown as per the demographics of the groups that we studied, but the therapists were about a mean age of 36, and the clients were, again, a mean age of 10. And there was a diverse sample. As you can see, there is about a even split of Asian American and white and Black therapists, as well as a majority Latinx clients. This also is a testament to the diversity of Los Angeles as well, and really gives us an insight into the space of mental health delivery and the mental health needs of our community, given our community specific context, also alluding to like the cultural needs of each group presented here today. And just to get into a little bit about how we assessed adherence, we had an observational coding method, which is essentially like a code book that we developed in collaboration with our doctoral student who supervised us, where we would provide a scale of 0 to 6 for each component that was delivered in the TFCBT training module. So I will get into the components in the next slide, but essentially we gave them a score of 1 to 6 on how well the therapist actually delivered the component as they were intended to be provided for the client, as well as like the aimed goal of each component and how well that was targeted by each therapist. And we had about 9 coders, including 3 native Spanish speakers and 2 native Mandarin speakers. And many of our research assistants were also from marginalized backgrounds near or around Los Angeles County. So this was incredibly personal research for them, as they also care for the mental health needs of their community. And we were able to see real life demonstrations of children and the challenges that they face with trauma. So that was really insightful to listen to as future clinicians and researchers as well. And then I will get into our results. And I know this table is super intimidating, but this is just a summary of our findings, and I will draw your attention to the ICCs and FLEAS kappas. The ICCs is actually the mean score that was provided for each component, and you can see that we had a relatively high rating for each one, close to about more than half, with our lowest category being assessment with about 0.6. And FLEAS kappas is for inter-rater reliability between our coders. So we can see that there was a high level of agreement for the scores provided for each category. And the practice components on the left are specific to TFCBT. For the sake of time, I will just leave the preview up here, but each of them have a specific goal for the client's to deal with, engage, and overcome their trauma experience. So I'm more than happy to answer many questions about that during our discussion, but this is just the general table of results. And given our high ratings of adherence and high ratings of inter-rater reliability, our main takeaway is that community therapists were rated to deliver TFCBT with high adherence. Therefore, they were able to support diverse youth and families with TFCBT as it was intended. And this is very encouraging for implementation efforts of TFCBT in LA community mental health settings in the future, as well as our understanding of the capacity of our current mental health space to support more clinicians to be trained in this way, to deliver specific treatments, as we can see that they were able to do so, despite the unique contexts and challenges that come with community mental health settings. And that does lead me to the conclusion of today's discussion, but I'm more than happy to take any questions when we get to our panel. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Okay, so last but not least, we have Riya, Shivanand. So Riya, go ahead and share your screen.
Sure thing. Okay, hi everybody, welcome to my presentation. I'm Riya Shivanand and I am an international development and political science major, but today I'm going to be representing my IDS side. So today I'm going to be talking about a worker's right to the city, exploring living wage campaigns and the struggle for alternative urban modalities. So my research really focuses on understanding the surge in living wage campaigns over the past 30 years. So we see that there have been over 140 campaigns passed nationwide, over 180 jurisdictions that have adopted living wage ordinances, and also over 21 of these ordinances have been adopted specifically from California. And so this noteworthy trend of passing living wage campaigns really relates to this concept of fighting against inflation, heightened costs of living, unsafe working conditions, and speaks more broadly to the purpose of living wage campaigns as movements that seek to create social change and also improve the lives of working class communities. And so living wage campaigns can do this in several ways, but for the purpose of my research today, I'm just going to be focusing on grassroots organizing and creating legislative and policy change, specifically through living wage ordinances and also through local city hall and local governance. So coming to the context of the Los Angeles city, my focus for research really centers around LA because of the unique collaborative network that exists between unions, working centers, and city hall that we don't see necessarily in a lot of other cities. And so we see that there is a sort of cohesion between these three actors where they work together and align a lot of the times in their goals to pass different campaigns. And this really allows them to mobilize the huge density of immigrants and people of color in LA. And so this allows LA to sort of create the momentum it needs to set national precedents and also gain a lot of attraction globally for its labor movements. And moreover, LA is also a tourist-based economy, which means that the LAX industry, the amusement parks, and a lot of the luxury hotels fuel a lot of the capital profit and allow LA to be a core city for this wealth. And so this means LA is home to over 36,000 hospitality and tourism workers, making a key place for studying and understanding the impact of living wage campaigns. And so this leads me to my research question, which is understanding the impact of living wage campaigns on the lives of tourism and hospitality workers in LA. And so to do this, I focus on two main case studies, the first being of the 2024 ongoing Tourism Workers Rising campaign, which seeks to increase the living wage to $25 per hour, and also the Raise the Wage LA campaign that took place 10 years ago and did increase the minimum wage to $14 per hour, which was the largest wage jump at the time. And the methods I use for this is conducting interviews with the organizers of both these campaigns, as well as interviewing the actual workers who were involved in both of these campaigns, as well as looking at newspapers, policy briefs, and more. And so the findings of my research really demonstrate that living wage campaigns allow workers to transform their relationship with the city in two main ways. They allow them to really take on positions of authority, autonomy, and more decision-making in the city. And so firstly, we see that living wage campaigns allow workers to create a sort of transgressive citizenship in which, unlike traditional citizenship that is based on residency in the city, workers are actually able to redefine and reconstruct their relationship to the city by being involved in the politics. And so this is seen through giving public city hall comments, as well as protesting, where they're able to sort of create a citizenship based off of political involvement. And we also see that living wage campaigns allow workers to challenge this center-periphery relationship, which is the idea that Los Angeles is a core city where there's an accumulation of wealth, as we talked about, because of the tourism economy, and workers are not able to live where they work, and so they're pushed to suburban cities and outer edge cities. But through livable wages, they're actually able to afford the housing in LA and become consumers of the city and collective resources LA provides, rather than just producers through their labor. And so moving forward, this significance of living wage campaigns is really important because we see that the 2026 FIFA World Cup is coming up in LA, as well as the 2028 Olympics. And so this means there's definitely a future for the tourism economy, and there's going to be more pushes for living wage campaigns. And so hopefully this research can help contribute to understanding the significance of living wage campaigns, and not only changing the way that workers really view themselves, but also really changing the city by allowing it to be more inclusive and more democratic and uplifting marginalized communities into positions of power. Thank you, guys. And if you have any questions, feel free to save them for later. Thank you.
Okay, great. Just on time. Okay, so now we're in this question and answer portion of our panel. So I'm gonna get us started, and then please feel free, audience members, if you have questions, you can either put it in the chat or you can just unmute yourself and just ask your question. But one thing I want to note is, talking about, everyone's research is related to LA. I think, UCLA being in LA does not mean that all of our students, or actually, those of us, the students especially who are here for short, sort of temporary periods of time, know a lot about Los Angeles unless you grew up around here. So I think it's really important to, have a sense of, the city that you're living in, for, however long you are here for. And I think, all of you are doing really interesting and important work around Los Angeles, and very contemporary work, right? Like this is all stuff that is affecting people right now. So that being said, I wanted to get us started with just, asking each of you, and any of you can get us started, but how did you get to your research topic? What sorts of, how did you get interested in your research topic? How did it develop? And what is that, what's that relationship to LA that, that's maybe either happened through the research or maybe started before the research? So anyone want to get us started? And I'll type in the question in the chat so you can remember as well. Okay, yeah, Jade, go for it.
Yes. So I'm an international student. So I'm from like Guangzhou, China. So it's like a southeast part, also a big city. And so I was grown up and really used to really convenient public transportation. So it's like I don't need to do like taxi or driving or Uber all the time. I can go to anywhere I want by metro or just by bus. And it's also really quick because it's really frequent. And after I moved here for college, like 2 years ago, like a year and a half ago, I was like quite shocked by the like frequency of bus and the fact that I need to like look at the app and get to the bus stop like in time to catch up with the bus. So that's like my personal reason of being interested in transportation study. And I also find because we have the universal transit pass right now. So I myself would take public transportation near us, like Big Blue Bus or Culver City Bus, pretty often. So that's like my personal reason that I want to see from a professional view that how this accessibility and how this service it's like running. So I got into this like super commuting project to know about the public transportation and also for LA because the city is so big and it's really car oriented. So it's also like related to super commuting and public transit service. Yeah.
Riya, go for it.
Yeah, so I think, originally I started out actually through one of my classes at UCLA. I did a community engagement class that led me to do political canvassing. And one thing led to another, and I got involved with living wage campaigns and interning with one of the working centers that helped pass them. And originally, I was involved on the organizing side. I was seeing things from the aspect of how do you make a living wage campaign happen? How do you get community members involved? And somewhere along the line, I started wondering, why are we even doing living wage campaigns? Why is this so powerful? Like, I wanted to understand more of theory and really like the statistical implications of the campaign. And so that is kind of how I started getting into my work. But, a lot of my findings are also based off of my fieldwork and my involvement with the campaign and what I've seen and, the relationships I've established with a lot of the workers. And I think during that time, my perception of LA changed where I realized how much community is really in LA and really how empowering it can be to join such a powerful like group of community and how much power there is in speaking up and voicing and kind of resisting things that are unfair.
I can go next. To preface that, once again, I'm in the lab for culture and race slash youth, culture and race slash ethnicity and youth mental health, which is also a mouthful, so we go by CARE. But yeah, I personally am very interested in mental health equity, which means like delivering appropriate services for cultural and community needs, as well as increasing accessibility to those mental health services. Which is why this research was so insightful and so empowering to see that this therapy method was actually supporting our community as it was intended to. And that was why it was really cool to actually get the chance to consider, like we consider all the time, like, is this actually helping the people that we aim to help? And given the power of our data from Los Angeles Department of Public Health, like we know that Los Angeles is a microcosm of so much diversity, and with our clients being of diverse backgrounds as well as our therapists, we were able to see like the efficacy of delivery even with these diverse backgrounds, and that was really empowering to support future implementation efforts. And I'm excited to kind of evaluate if client outcomes are also supported by the high adherence ratings. So that is definitely a future line of work that I would hope to explore.
Alaiza, yeah.
Yeah, so for me, LA really is where I go to school. That's how I used to just think of it, as just this is where I come to go to school. I'm from the Bay Area. So at first, I wasn't really loving LA. I was like, I don't know anybody here. I don't know anything here. It just wasn't a fit for me. But through my time in Blades, which is the Black Latinx AIDS Project, I was able to connect with a lot of different students, high school students, especially from Los Angeles, that really looked like me. And I felt like they knew that I looked like them. And we gave even similar, like different presentations on like the college experience, financial aid, things like that, like a lot of different topics. And the students were really, really engaged. And I just started thinking, in my own life, I've never had any safe sex education. I wonder if they have. And that's kind of where my research came from. And then I've kind of suffered the consequences, I think, of not having a safe sex education. So it's really important to me that I don't see other people suffering the things that I've had to go through because they didn't have a safe sex education. So I think going out into these communities, even through with my volunteer service, I felt like we really made a difference there. And so my research became like kind of like my personal mission to ensure that young people in Los Angeles have access to comprehensive safe sex education that I think everybody deserves.
Great. Yeah. Well, I have like a lot of questions for each of you, honestly, but let me see here.
Can I ask a question?
Oh yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, hi, my name is Rachel Jones. I'm a professor and I'm also the chair of the Environmental Health Sciences Department in Fielding School of Public Health. And I was really excited to see this come through my email this morning and be able to join because I've only been in LA for about 1.5 years. So I'm still learning a lot about the city and finding all sorts of interesting things, places and people around the city. And I guess I have a question for you. I know one person mentioned plans to go to a public health school next year. And I was just curious how your experience in this research has maybe changed or shaped your experience at UCLA and what you're thinking about doing for the future.
Hi, yes. So I would say this research really shaped what I want to do. To be honest, when I came as a transfer student, I was originally like a pre-med student, and I took a course, an undergraduate course, Introduction to the Environment, Diversity, and Health Disparities. And that singular course changed my whole trajectory of my life. Had I not joined that course, I would have, just kept going on my way, but it really brought public health into my eye. And this research specifically, what I want to do, I hopefully want to get a PhD after my master's in public health. So I kind of want to explore like abortion-seeking behaviors in the future. So this research really shaped the fact that I want to focus on like sexual health, reproductive rights, everything like that. It really kind of re-emphasized and like put into my mind, like, this is what I want to do with my life. Like, it's really been like a super passion project for me. And so I can't wait to explore that in the future. And yes, I will be going to public health school, which I'm also really excited about. I can't wait to start that.
All right, thank you for the question. It looks like we have a question from Emily in the chat. This is for Zephania. What are some of the applications of your findings? What actions should federal and or local organizations take going forward based on your research?
Yeah, thank you so much for the question. I think my research has definitely shown a lot that we can continue to do with that work. I think especially in the distinction between local and federal, seeing collaboration versus coordination as important. I think from the federal level, the implication there is that we need to do more to engage the local voice and to really collaborate with them on who they're coordinating with on the horizontal level. And then on the local level and like LA organizations, figuring out what ways we can connect with the government who does currently are trying to connect with the local organizations, but just don't really know how to support that. So I think what the research is really showing is that there needs to be more spaces for that conversation to take place.
Great, thank you. Any other questions from the audience? We still have time, so it's not a big deal if you. Oh yes, Rachel.
I have one more. I have a question specifically for Riya. Am I saying that correctly?
Riya,
Riya, about the living wage campaign. So I actually hosted a conference here at UCLA on Thursday about artificial stone workers who are developing silicosis and dying at the age of 30s in California. And there's a bill pending in the state legislature, and I'm curious to get your take on it. The bill has a number of provisions, but one of the provisions that was originally in it was that employers pay a prevailing wage, because many of the workers in this industry are day laborers or undocumented workers. And there's a series of what the industry describes as bad actor organizations. But for that bill to emerge from committee, they had to take the wage requirements out. And that was really to appease industry. But I'm wondering if you think what your reaction to something like that is, and
Yeah.
kind of a vague question.
No, thank you for bringing that up. I think, I wish I could say I was surprised, but I think it's very typical of a lot of employers to not want to discuss the wage theft that's going on for a lot of these workers, where, they're working overtime, and they're commuting hours to go to work, and they're not getting paid enough. And it is really difficult to bring up the topic of wages because there is generally, I think there's this idea that paying workers more means there's going to be inflation or that this is going to tank the economy in some way. But I think it's really important to understand that increasing wages is something that employers could easily do without, increasing the costs of their goods because they are pocketing a lot of the money anyways. And so very recently, in June of last year, actually, there were the contract negotiations for a lot of these workers. And we saw the same issue that you brought up where they were willing to, maybe do paid days for sick leave, but they were not willing to talk about higher wages. And even now we see there's still a struggle going on with City Hall to increase this living wage. So yeah, I guess my reaction to it is I think it's very typical, but yeah. Thank you for the question.
Other questions from the audience?
Hi everyone. My name is Jackie. I'm the director of one of our undergraduate research centers, and I just want to say it was fabulous to hear all of your presentations today. You guys are all doing such exciting work. And my question is actually for Alaiza. Is that how you say your name?
Alaiza.
Alaiza. Okay, perfect. Alaiza. I was just really interested in what you were saying about sex education. And as someone who had like a very, very limited sex education in my public school in the 90s, I'm wondering, this may be outside the bounds of your particular project, but I'm wondering if how should I say this, like queer forms of sex education are addressed in the curriculum in curricula today. I can think about like when I went to like my sex education in the 90s was pretty much like don't have sex, you're going to get AIDS and die. And there was no, I mean, I'm not really exaggerating here. And like there was, like sex is between anything other than between a man and a woman was just like not on the curriculum at all. And I'm wondering, like, is that something that has shifted in California or nationally in the past 25 years? Kind of like, what is sex education like today for middle schoolers and high schoolers?
Thank you so much for your question. Similar to you, I had no sex education at all in my public
Mhm.
school, so I feel like I had such a big knowledge gap myself. But in the school that I went to, students did not report any queer form of safe sex education. So I think that there's still limitations and
Mhm.
mountains to move in order to kind of implement that into the curriculum. For our presentation, we did include it, but not to such a great extent. But we did try to include it just to make sure everyone felt included in our conversation. But it looks like there still is work to be done on that point, at a state level and honestly like a universal level.
Mhm. Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the question.
I just have a quick follow-up to Jackie's question, which is because I know you were comparing it to the Bay Area. That's all California. They're both public schools, yet you have had very different experiences. I'm just curious if you can like clarify that, because I just assumed that would be kind of across the board the same thing.
Yes, so I'm not entirely sure when the California Healthy Youth Act was implemented, but that kind of requires the safe sex education. So everybody, I think only one person reported that they didn't receive the form of education here in Los Angeles, but besides that, everybody had some form of safe sex education at school, which was either like, a whole semester long class or like a workshop or something like that. But back home, we did not have, I don't know why we have this gap, but we did not have it at all. We were supposed to have it scheduled and then our teacher never did it. So we had it like in the works and then it never happened. So yeah, my schools, and I was in 3 different public schools, so like elementary, middle school, and high school, and it was not taught at either one of those 3. So I wanted to see if that was like a lone experience because, and it kind of looks like it might be, but I would love to continue this or maybe do a comparative study like in the Bay Area, like repeat this, but at a high school there.
Thank you. Other questions for our panel?
Yeah, I actually had one more question for Namrata. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about like how you want to carry what you've learned from your research into the future. Like, are you interested in becoming a clinician? Are you interested in doing, future research? Where do you kind of intend to take all this?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for your question. I definitely am interested in extending this research, hopefully through a PhD program in clinical psychology. And once again, I think mental health equity is like one of my main motivations. It's just to increase accessibility for like underserved communities. And I'm so thankful I got the opportunity to kind of get involved with research accordingly, like evaluating the same type of question. Um, Hopefully, as I mentioned, since we were only able to evaluate like the adherence according to the sessions provided by therapists, a future line of work that I could do with the same research is to assess client outcomes if we're able to like see if it was actually supporting them, if they were able to like effectively deal with the trauma that they endured in childhood. But according to like, or in line with the skills that I gained, I hope to like pursue other research similarly assessing if treatment is effective for diverse populations. And I think there's like so much, there's so many disparities that can be addressed. So I think there's definitely a lot of work available in this line.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I see Emily has another question. I actually think that's a really great closing question. So I'm going to wait on that for a few minutes before we address it. But yeah, other questions, any specific questions for one of our audience, for our panelists, or anything more broadly? Okay. Well, one question I had that kind of addresses, that's for everyone is thinking about your discipline and your methodology. How has that affected your approach to your topic in LA? Yeah, does that make sense? Anyone want to get us started?
Yeah, I can start us off. I think this is especially relevant. Once again, I know I've said it so many times, but just like supporting underserved communities, I think is so important from the mental health space, just because there's so many stressors faced by varying communities that aren't really addressed by the standardized forms of treatment. And I think that's why I was really able to apply both my fields of study because I'm a psychology and sociology major. And that's what really inspired me to pursue both fields because I'm aware of the individual and like institutional factors that impact someone's well-being. So I think that definitely like inspired my research and hopefully my future research as well. So excited to see what else I get to work on.
I'd say my discipline of community engagement and social change has also definitely affected the research and the methodology. Community engaged research in itself has a very special focus on including lived experience and connecting with organizations who really are like on the grounds and have that heart tie to the work that they're doing. So most of the research I did, or all the research I did, was done through direct interviews with these organizations, and particularly with individuals within the organizations who were also impacted by the criminal justice system themselves. So being able to then hear that double perspective of their personal experience working through the incarceration system, but also their experience working in the administration level of how to then give back to their communities and all those barriers that they face while doing that, I think has definitely made the work have that much more significance to it.
Yeah, I could go next. I think very similarly, a lot of my research is focused on integrating the opinions of the workers themselves and understanding their lived experiences and the impact these campaigns had on their lives. And that's so that I avoid sort of glossing over a lot of the nuances and the details of how these living wages impact workers, specifically because my research is not just about, okay, like these living wages means you can have more housing or food or shelter. It's also about understanding, well, how did it change your sense of belonging? How did it reconstruct how you view yourself in relation to larger organizations with city government? And so I think my approach to my research was really rooted in the idea of, I want to make sure that I'm representing the workers as I write. And so yeah, it's very much about sort of making sure that I'm accurately embodying the feelings and the experiences of workers, and not just narrating something through maybe even a colonial lens in certain ways that focuses more on corporations and profits over actually the people and their experiences.
I can go next. Since like my major is completely like unrelated to my research in transportation and sustainability, I feel like my inclination to ask why and also think about the logic behind the phenomenon is like driving me to know more about the problem, and especially like my skill in like coding and also data analysis, looking over patterns help me to compare between commuters and compare between years. And also, I really enjoy doing the policy recommendation and policy brief part of the project, because I feel like I'm brainstorming a solution to a problem, and that's also like connected to my other discipline in biology. And yeah, I really enjoyed this research and this opportunity to like get a slight professional peek at this phenomenon of like taking transit and commuting.
For me, my new passion for public health, even though it's not my major, I wish it was, and it really drove my research, and my wanting to do sexual health and reproductive health related research really stems from my own personal experiences. So the combination of my new passion for public health and my personal experiences really drove why I wanted to do the research. And in the pre-survey, seeing the such diverse demographics, kind of like how Riya said, it really showed me that I need to embody their experiences, like tailoring the safe sex education presentation that we did to meet the diversity was something that it was an approach that I took to my research. So it was a lot of drafts of the presentation, but there was one I had originally, and seeing there was such immense diversity and the fact that I've experienced probably similar things to the Latinx youth, I was able to kind of tie that in and weave that in a lot better.
Okay, I think everyone went, yes. My goodness, we're practically at the hour, but I do want to address Emily's question. So we can maybe do like a lightning round. So really quick, what is one thing from your research that you hope everyone takes away from today? Anyone can start.
I would say that tailored, comprehensive sex education is necessary, if I had to put in one sentence.
Perfect.
I would say support living wage campaigns because they are essential to democracy.
I would say that there still needs to be continued work into issues that we feel are so commonplace, like homelessness and incarceration, to look into those intersections and see what else can be done.
I would say diverse community mental health needs can and should be supported.
And I would say it's much more than expected that many people super commute and have a long commute duration or distance, and it's like a really important problem to be seen.
Great. That's awesome, everyone. Thank you so much. So we are now at the end of our hour. Let's have another round of virtual applause. And I just really appreciate everyone's research here. I think you're all doing great work. It's always exciting to, you know, see undergraduates so passionate about the research that they're doing. And all of you absolutely, I think, are doing amazing work. So thanks again. And I'm going to go ahead and end the recording here. And yeah. See you in other research-oriented events for the rest of the week.
Congratulations, everybody.